Lieutenant Ethan Carter adjusted the collar of his uniform as he stepped into the Grand Hall of Velixer's capital city. Towering pillars of smooth metallic stone stretched high into the sky, glowing softly with green energy lines. The room was filled with alien delegates from across the galaxy, some tall and thin, others short and covered in fur, and a few that looked like living machines. Yet, despite the variety of species, Ethan was the only human present. He wasn't nervous, at least not visibly. As one of Earth's diplomatic officers, he had trained for this moment. Still, he could feel the curious eyes of the aliens studying him, analyzing every movement he made. He had read about Velixerans before coming here. They were an advanced species with strong, armored bodies covered in smooth chitin plates. Their kind had no soft skin, no muscle exposed to the elements. To them, humans must have seemed strange, fragile, even. Among the Velixeran delegation, one figure stood out, a tall female with dark blue exoskeleton plating and glowing silver eyes. She wore an elegant robe, a sign of her status as a scientist rather than a warrior. Her name was Ayla. And from the moment Ethan entered the hall, her gaze was locked onto him. As the diplomatic discussions began, Ethan tried to focus, but Ayla's intense stare was making him uneasy. Finally, after an hour of talks about trade routes and technology exchanges, the meeting was adjourned and the delegates were allowed to mingle. It wasn't long before Ayla approached him. "Human," she said, her voice smooth yet firm. "Your skin looks different. It is so soft-looking." She tilted her head slightly, as if analyzing him. "May I touch it?" Ethan blinked. Of all the questions he had expected, this was not one of them. "You want to touch my skin?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Ayla gave a slow nod. "Yes. I have studied many species, but I have never encountered one like yours. Your kind lacks natural armor, yet you survive. I am curious." Ethan hesitated. This wasn't exactly part of standard diplomatic protocol, but she didn't seem to have any harmful intent, just genuine scientific interest. He glanced around. Other delegates were engaged in conversations, not paying attention to them. "All right," he said finally, extending his hand. "Just a quick touch." Ayla's silver eyes gleamed with curiosity as she reached out. Her fingers, tipped with small but sharp claws, gently traced over the back of Ethan's hand. He expected her touch to be rough, maybe even cold, but it was surprisingly delicate. "Incredible," she whispered. "It is warm and flexible. Your skin moves with your muscles." She pressed a little more, watching as his skin slightly indented before bouncing back. "This is fascinating." Ethan chuckled, feeling both amused and slightly uncomfortable. "I guess it's normal for us. Our bodies are built for movement, not protection." Ayla didn't release his hand immediately. Instead, she tilted her head again, deep in thought. "But how do you endure injuries? You have no natural plating, no external reinforcement." "We heal," Ethan explained. "Our bodies repair themselves over time. Cuts close up, bones knit back together. We're designed to adapt." Ayla's eyes widened slightly. "Self-repairing flesh. That is highly efficient." She finally let go of his hand but continued to study him with fascination. "I must learn more." Ethan wasn't sure how to respond to that. He had met curious scientists before, but Ayla's interest felt more intense. She wasn't just interested in humans as a species, she was interested in him personally. A soft chime echoed through the hall, signaling the next stage of the summit. The delegates began returning to their seats. As Ethan turned to leave, Ayla spoke again. "Lieutenant Carter," she said, and he turned back to face her. "Would you be willing to meet with me later? I have many questions." Ethan studied her for a moment. The logical part of his brain told him that getting too close to an alien scientist might be a bad idea. But another part of him, the part that had signed up for space exploration and first contact missions, was intrigued. "All right," he said with a small smile. I'll meet you after the summit. Ayla's lips curled slightly, almost like a smile of her own. Good. I look forward to it. As Ethan walked back to his seat, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something unusual, and possibly something far bigger than he realized. After the summit ended for the day, Lieutenant Ethan Carter found himself walking through the glowing streets of Velixer's capital. The city was unlike anything he had seen before. Tall structures of smooth black stone, lined with veins of pulsing green light. The air smelled slightly metallic, and despite the alien nature of the place, everything felt oddly peaceful. He followed the instructions given to him earlier, making his way to one of the scientific research centers. Ayla had invited him to speak privately, and though he wasn't entirely sure what to expect, curiosity had gotten the better of him. The doors slid open as he approached, revealing a large chamber filled with strange machines. Transparent tubes of swirling blue liquid lined the walls, and floating holographic displays projected information in a language he couldn't understand. At the center of it all stood Ayla, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "You came," she said, her voice smooth and calm. Ethan nodded. "You said you had questions." Ayla gestured to a sleek metal chair, and Ethan hesitated for a moment before sitting. She stepped closer, her head tilting slightly as she studied him. "I have been analyzing the data on your species," she said, picking up a small scanning device. "But I need more direct observations." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Direct observations?" "Yes." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze intense. "Your skin is unlike any I have encountered before. It is vulnerable, yet capable of regeneration. I must understand it." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You really are fascinated by human skin, aren't you?" Ayla didn't deny it. Instead, she reached out once more, hesitating slightly before placing her fingers on his forearm. Her claws were cool against his warm skin, and she seemed utterly focused as she traced the contours of his muscles. "Incredible," she murmured. "Your body lacks natural armor, yet you survive through endurance and adaptation. I have studied many species, but none have such a design." Ethan shifted slightly in his seat. "I wouldn't call it a design. We just evolved this way." Ayla nodded, though her gaze never left his arm. "Your kind must endure pain frequently." Ethan sighed. "Yeah, we do, but we heal fast, and we learn from it. Pain teaches us what to avoid." Ayla's silver eyes flickered with curiosity. "Velixerans do not experience pain as you do. Our exoskeletons protect us from most harm. But I wonder." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Wonder what?" She stepped back and picked up a small instrument from the table. It resembled a sleek handheld scanner, but when she activated it, a thin blue light emitted from the tip. "This device measures biological response to external stimuli," she explained. "It can detect stress, pain, and recovery speed. I wish to test it on you." Ethan frowned. "Define test." Ayla hesitated. "I do not wish to harm you, but I wish to understand how your body reacts to touch, pressure, and sensation." Ethan considered it. The request was strange, but Ayla wasn't acting maliciously. To her, this was purely scientific. He took a deep breath and nodded. "All right. Just nothing extreme." Ayla's eyes brightened slightly, and she gently placed the scanner against his palm. The blue light pulsed, sending a faint tingling sensation through his skin. "You feel this?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's like a mild vibration." Ayla adjusted the settings, increasing the intensity slightly. The tingling became a deeper pressure, almost like a firm grip. Ethan flexed his fingers, testing the sensation. "You are remarkably resilient," Ayla noted, watching the scanner's readings. "Even under stress, your body remains stable. Your kind does not break easily." Ethan smirked. "We've been through a lot as a species. Adaptability is kind of our thing." Ayla deactivated the scanner and stepped back, looking thoughtful. You are unlike any species we have encountered. Most life forms rely on natural armor or weapons to survive, but your kind relies on endurance, intelligence, and willpower. Ethan shrugged. That's what makes us human. Ayla studied him for a long moment before speaking again. I wish to learn more about your kind, not just biologically, but culturally, emotionally. Ethan blinked. Emotionally. Ayla nodded. Your species has strong social bonds. You form connections beyond logic, beyond survival necessity. This intrigues me. Ethan chuckled. We're complicated, that's for sure. Ayla tilted her head slightly. Would you be willing to spend more time with me? I wish to observe your behavior in different situations. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't sure what she truly wanted to learn, but he had to admit, he was curious about her as well. He had met many aliens before, but Ayla was different. She wasn't just a scientist. She was someone who genuinely wanted to understand. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll help you learn about humans, but in return, I want to learn about Velixorens. Ayla's lips curved slightly in what might have been her version of a smile. Agreed. As Ethan left the lab that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just taken the first step into something far bigger than a simple scientific study. The next day, Lieutenant Ethan Carter found himself in the heart of Velixor's Grand Research Complex. The towering black structures hummed with energy, and strange floating machines zipped through the air, scanning data and transporting equipment. Unlike the diplomatic halls, this place was filled with scientists, Velixorens of different shades of blue and green exoskeletons, all engaged in their work. But today, their focus had shifted. Ethan could feel dozens of silver eyes watching him as he walked beside Ayla. Some of the scientists whispered in their alien tongue, while others openly stared. A few even leaned in as if they wanted a closer look but were unsure if they were allowed. Ayla seemed unaware of their curiosity, or perhaps she simply didn't care. She led Ethan into a large circular chamber where a holographic display hovered over a sleek black table. The display showed an image of a human skeleton rotating slowly, surrounded by lines of text in an alien script. This is your biological profile, based on yesterday's analysis. Ayla explained, motioning for Ethan to sit. I presented my findings to my colleagues, and now they all wish to learn more. Ethan sighed. I'm starting to feel like a lab specimen. Ayla tilted her head. Is that bad? He chuckled. Usually, yes, but I'll let it slide. For now. Before Ayla could respond, another Velixoran scientist stepped forward. He was slightly shorter than Ayla, with a deep green exoskeleton and thin, insect-like fingers. His silver eyes gleamed with curiosity. I am Dr. Relic. He introduced himself. It is an honor to meet a human in person. Ethan nodded. Nice to meet you too. Relic leaned in slightly. Your species is truly remarkable. Your lack of natural armor should make you weak, yet you endure. Your ability to recover from injury, adapt to extreme environments, and even resist pain, it is most intriguing. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, I've heard that a lot lately. Relic didn't seem to notice his hesitation. Instead, he turned to Ayla. Has he demonstrated his endurance yet? Ayla shook her head. Not fully. Relic's eyes brightened. Then we must test it. Ethan held up a hand. Wait, hold on. Define test before I agree to anything. Ayla responded calmly. Nothing harmful. We wish to understand the limits of your physical abilities, your strength, speed, and endurance. Ethan exhaled. All right, fine. Just no weird experiments. Ayla and Relic exchanged a glance before leading him to another room. This one resembled a training arena, with various metallic structures and strange-looking obstacles. A group of Velixoran researchers gathered around, their silver eyes filled with anticipation. Ayla gestured toward a large slab of dark metal. This is a standard durability test. Velxaran warriors can strike this material without sustaining damage. We wish to see how a human fares. Ethan stepped closer, examining the metal. It looked solid, and he knew better than to punch something without preparation. "All right," he muttered, rolling his shoulders. "Here goes nothing." With a sharp breath, he pulled back his fist and delivered a strong punch. A dull thud echoed through the room. Pain shot through his knuckles, but he didn't flinch. When he pulled his hand back, he saw a faint dent in the metal. The Velxaran scientists murmured among themselves. "Incredible," Relic whispered. "A being with no natural armor, yet still capable of causing impact damage." Ethan shook his hand, flexing his fingers. "Yeah. Well, that hurt." Ayla studied him closely. "Yet you do not react strongly to pain." Ethan shrugged. "Humans are used to it. We push through." The murmurs grew louder. Some scientists took notes, others whispered excitedly. Ethan sighed. He was starting to feel like a circus act. Then something unexpected happened. One of the younger Velxaran scientists hesitantly stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, her exoskeleton a lighter shade of blue. Slowly, she reached out a hand. Ethan frowned. "Oh, what's she doing?" "She wishes to touch your skin," Ayla explained. Ethan sighed. "Is this gonna become a thing?" Ayla gave a small nod. "Likely, yes." With an amused shake of his head, Ethan extended his arm. The young scientist's claws barely grazed his skin before she pulled back with a shocked expression. "It is soft," she whispered, almost in disbelief. More scientists began stepping forward, murmuring among themselves. One touched his shoulder. Another examined his palm. Before Ethan could stop it, he was surrounded, each scientist carefully inspecting different parts of his exposed skin. Ayla finally spoke, her voice carrying authority. "Enough." The scientists immediately stepped back. Ethan let out a relieved sigh. "Thanks." Ayla nodded. "I understand their curiosity, but we will respect your limits." Ethan smirked. "Appreciated." Relic folded his arms. "There is much to learn about humans. You are not the strongest species, nor the fastest, yet you survive through sheer willpower. Your adaptability is a trait few species possess." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, we're pretty stubborn." Ayla studied him once more, her silver eyes filled with thought. "Stubbornness, endurance, intelligence. Your species is unique, Ethan Carter, and I believe we have only scratched the surface of what makes humanity special." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Well, if you want to learn more, I guess I'm here for a while." Ayla's lips curled slightly in that almost smile of hers. "Yes, and I look forward to it." As Ethan left the research complex, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He had come for a diplomatic mission, but now he was at the center of an alien fascination, and something told him that things were only going to get more interesting from here. Ethan Carter wasn't sure what to expect when Ayla invited him to a Velxaran training ground the next morning. The research experiments had already pushed his patience, but something told him this was different. As he followed Ayla through the dark corridors of the complex, the soft hum of alien machinery echoed around them. "Where exactly are we going?" Ethan asked. Ayla walked with her usual calm, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You have demonstrated human endurance and adaptability. Now, I wish to see how you react in a survival scenario." Ethan frowned. "Wait, is this another experiment?" Ayla paused, tilting her head slightly. "Not an experiment. A demonstration. You are a soldier, are you not?" Ethan crossed his arms. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean I want to be tested like a lab rat every day." Ayla's gaze softened. "This is different. I wish to show my people that humans are not weak. Many still believe that a species without natural armor cannot be strong. I wish to prove them wrong." Ethan exhaled. He understood what she was trying to do. If he could prove himself here, maybe the other Velixurans would stop treating him like a fragile curiosity. "All right," he said. "What do I have to do?" Ayla led him through a large doorway, revealing a vast open training ground. The floor was covered in smooth black stone, with high walls and large circular platforms scattered throughout. Several Velixuran warriors stood in formation, their exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial light. They looked strong, each one larger and bulkier than Ayla, their armored bodies built for battle. One of them stepped forward. His exoskeleton was a dark shade of green, and his eyes glowed with a piercing silver light. He was taller than Ethan by at least a foot, and the way he moved reminded Ethan of a predator stalking its prey. "This is Commander Xelvar," Ayla introduced. "He is one of our finest warriors." Xelvar studied Ethan with open curiosity. "This is the human." Ayla nodded. "Yes, and he has agreed to a demonstration." Ethan gave a cautious nod. "Yeah, but let's be clear. I don't plan on getting beaten to a pulp for science." Xelvar let out a low, amused sound. "Do not worry, human. This is a test of strategy, not brute force." Ethan relaxed slightly. "All right. What's the test?" Ayla gestured toward the training arena. "You must evade Xelvar for 5 minutes. You cannot use pawns, only your instincts and agility." Ethan glanced at Selvar's heavy, armored frame. The Velixuran warrior looked like he could punch through a steel wall. This was going to be interesting. 5 minutes, Ethan repeated. "That's it." Ayla nodded. "If you last that long, it will prove that humans have strengths beyond simple combatability." Ethan rolled his shoulders. "All right, let's do this." The Velixuran warriors stepped back, forming a circle around the training ground. A low chime rang through the air, signaling the start of the match. Xelvar moved first. The alien warrior lunged forward with surprising speed, his massive hand swiping toward Ethan's shoulder. Ethan barely dodged, twisting to the side as the air whistled past his ear. Fast. Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved, sprinting across the arena, using the platforms as cover. Xelvar followed, his heavy footsteps echoing through the space. The warrior didn't slow down, climbing over obstacles with ease, his movements precise and calculated. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't outrun Xelvar forever. But if this was about endurance, he had to be smart. He zigzagged through the arena, using sudden changes in direction to throw Xelvar off. The warrior was strong and fast, but not as agile. Every time he lunged, Ethan twisted away at the last second, forcing Xelvar to adjust his momentum. The Velixuran onlookers murmured in surprise. "He is predicting Xelvar's movements," one of them whispered. "Interesting," another said. "He adapts quickly." Xelvar let out a low growl. He was taking this seriously now. With a powerful leap, he landed directly in front of Ethan, cutting off his escape. Ethan barely stopped himself from colliding with the massive warrior. "Nowhere left to run, human," Xelvar rumbled. Ethan smirked. "Who said I was running?" Before Xelvar could react, Ethan ducked low and slid between his legs, popping up on the other side before sprinting away again. The crowd let out a collective murmur of astonishment. Ayla watched with keen interest. So this is human adaptability in action. The minutes ticked by, and Ethan kept moving, dodging, and outmaneuvering Xelvar at every turn. Sweat dripped down his forehead. His breathing was heavy, but he didn't stop. Finally, the chime rang again. 5 minutes had passed. Ethan exhaled, hands on his knees. "Well, that was fun." Xelvar turned to Ayla. "He lasted. Impressive." Ayla stepped forward. "This proves that humans do not need natural armor to survive. Their strength lies in their intelligence, reflexes, and endurance." The other Velixuran warriors nodded in agreement. Xelvar approached Ethan, crossing his arms. "You have my respect, human." Ethan smirked. "Glad to hear it." Ayla's silver eyes gleamed with satisfaction. I believe this is only the beginning. There is still much more to learn. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow. Yeah, well, next time, let's pick a test that doesn't involve me running for my life. Ayla gave the smallest of smiles. We shall see. As Ethan left the training ground, he realized something. He wasn't just some human curiosity anymore. He had earned their respect. And somehow, that felt more important than any diplomatic meeting ever could. Ethan Carter sat on a metallic bench in the Velix research facility, rolling his shoulder to ease the stiffness from his recent training match. His muscles ached, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had survived a test against one of their strongest warriors, and for the first time since arriving, the Velixurans were looking at him differently. No longer just a fragile outsider. Now he was someone worth noticing. Ayla stood beside him, her silver eyes studying him as if analyzing his every movement. You are injured, she asked. Ethan chuckled. Not really. Just sore. Ayla tilted her head slightly. Your durability is remarkable. Humans don't go down easy, Ethan said, smirking. Before Ayla could respond, a deep voice interrupted them. I wish to challenge the human. Ethan and Ayla turned to see a large Velixuran warrior standing at the entrance of the chamber. He was even bulkier than Xelvar, his exoskeleton a dark reddish hue. His glowing silver eyes locked onto Ethan with clear intent. Ayla stiffened. Velrax, this is unnecessary. Velrax ignored her and took a step forward. I saw the human's little game with Xelvar. He ran. He did not fight. His gaze shifted to Ethan. Can you fight, human? Ethan sighed. He had a feeling something like this would happen. I can, he replied simply. Then prove it. Velrax slammed a fist against his armored chest. A real fight. No running. The other Velixuran warriors murmured among themselves. A challenge like this wasn't just for sport. It was a test of respect, and Ethan knew that refusing would make him look weak. Ayla stepped between them. This is not a necessary trial. Velrax narrowed his eyes. You defend him, yet he does not defend himself. Is he truly worthy of our respect? Ethan exhaled sharply, then stood up. He wasn't about to let someone decide his worth for him. I accept, he said. Ayla's gaze flickered with something unreadable, but she did not object. The training arena was prepared once again, but this time, it wasn't a game of endurance. It was a one-on-one battle. Ethan stepped into the circular combat zone, stretching his arms and rolling his neck. Across from him, Velrax cracked his knuckles, his thick exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. The rules are simple, Ayla announced. The fight ends when one of you yields or is unable to continue. Ethan exhaled. All right. No pressure. The chime rang. Velrax moved first. Unlike Xelvar, who had relied on speed, Velrax was all power. He charged forward with a thunderous stomp, swinging a massive fist toward Ethan's chest. Ethan barely had time to react. He twisted his body, dodging just in time to feel the wind from the attack rush past him. If that had hit me, I'd be on the ground already. Ethan knew he couldn't rely on brute strength to win this fight. His opponent was stronger, tougher, and far more experienced in direct combat. But Ethan had something else: strategy. He kept moving, staying just out of Velrax's reach. Every time the warrior swung, Ethan sidestepped or ducked, forcing Velrax to waste energy. The Velixuran warriors watching the fight murmured in surprise. He avoids direct impact, one observed. He studies his opponent, another noted. Velrax growled, Stop running and fight me. Ethan smirked. All right. Then, without warning, he moved in. Instead of retreating, Ethan stepped toward Velrax, catching him off guard. He aimed a sharp punch at the side of Velrax's knee, the joint where his exoskeleton's armor was thinner. A sharp crack echoed through the arena as Velrax staggered slightly. He wasn't injured, but he felt it. Ethan didn't let him recover. He moved again, this time striking Velrax's ribs with a quick jab, then retreating before the warrior could counter. The crowd gasped. Velrax snarled and swung wildly, but Ethan had already moved. He was faster, lighter, and harder to predict. While Velrax had raw strength, Ethan had precision. The battle continued, and Velrax became visibly frustrated. His attacks grew sloppier, his movements less controlled. Ethan could see it. He was tiring. And then Ethan saw his chance. Velrax lunged forward for another powerful strike, but Ethan anticipated it. At the last second, he ducked low and swept his leg out, striking behind Velrax's knee. The massive warrior fell. A heavy thud shook the ground as Velrax landed on his back. Ethan was on him in an instant, pressing his knee against Velrax's chest, his fist raised. "Yield," Ethan said, breathing hard. Velrax's silver eyes stared at him, unblinking. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, to Ethan's surprise, Velrax laughed. A deep, rumbling sound filled the air. "You are stronger than you look, human." With a grunt, Velrax pushed Ethan off and stood up. He touched his knee, flexing it slightly, then turned to face Ethan once more. "I yield," he said. The arena erupted in murmurs, some in disbelief, others in admiration. Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Well, that was fun." Velrax grinned. "You have earned my respect, human." Ayla approached, her silver eyes gleaming. "It seems we have underestimated human combat ability." Ethan shrugged. "We may not have exoskeletons, but we know how to fight." Velrax crossed his arms. "Next time, we fight with weapons." Ethan laughed. "One step at a time, big guy." As Ethan left the arena, he realized something important. He had just won over another Velexaran warrior. One by one, he was proving that humanity was not weak. And something told him that this was just the beginning. Days passed, and the atmosphere between Lieutenant Ethan Carter and the Velexaran people shifted. The intense combat demonstrations, the endless tests, and the curiosity about his species had slowly but surely earned Ethan a place among them. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He had become a symbol of what humanity was capable of. Yet, despite the growing respect he received, there was an undercurrent of tension. The Velexaran scientists were fascinated by human physiology, and their warriors respected his ability to fight. But the politicians and high-ranking leaders still saw humanity as little more than a curious experiment. Ethan could sense it in their eyes every time he walked into a room. The lingering doubt, the uncertainty. One morning, as Ethan sat with Ayla in the quiet gardens of the research facility, the topic came up once again. "You've made a strong impression," Ayla said, her voice soft but steady. Ethan didn't look up from where he was resting, his arms crossed behind his head. He was lying on the grass, looking at the alien sky above. "Yeah, I've noticed. But it doesn't feel like enough." Ayla sat down beside him, her long blue and green exoskeleton gleaming under the light. "You've proved your strength and adaptability. They respect you now." Ethan exhaled slowly. Respect isn't the same as trust. There's a difference. Ayla's silver eyes studied him for a moment before she responded. "They are not ready to fully trust you, but that can change with time. You must be patient." Ethan sat up, his eyes locking with hers. "I don't have time. The reason I came here wasn't just to impress them or prove how tough humans are. I came for a peace agreement. If they don't trust me, if they don't trust us, then what's the point?" Ayla's gaze softened, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Not all things can be solved in a short time. The Velexaran are cautious. We have suffered great loss in the past, and we do not take trust lightly. Ethan nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had been through wars, and he knew that building trust in a new world was no different than building it in the old one. But still, the pressure was mounting. The peace talks were scheduled soon, and Ethan wasn't sure if the Velexaran were ready for true cooperation with humanity. As if on cue, the soft hum of an approaching ship broke the silence. Ethan stood, turning to see a sleek, dark craftland a few meters away. Ayla stood as well, her eyes narrowed in recognition. "It seems the time has come," she said softly. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Who's that?" "It's the High Council," Ayla replied. "The leaders who have the final say on the peace agreement." Ethan's expression hardened. "This is it." Ayla nodded. "Be prepared. The High Council will not be easily convinced." The ship doors opened, and a group of Velexarin leaders stepped out. They were different from the warriors Ethan had seen in the arena. Their exoskeletons were sleeker, more refined, and their eyes had an intensity that made Ethan's spine tingle. At the head of the group was a tall, imposing figure. His exoskeleton was a shimmering, reflective silver that seemed to radiate power. His eyes were dark, like polished onyx. He was the High Chancellor of the Velexarin, Ythar. Ayla greeted him with a formal nod, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Ythar," she said, her voice careful. "Welcome." Ythar's eyes swept over Ethan, taking in his human form with an almost cold curiosity. "Ayla, I see the human has proven himself in combat. But tell me, what else has he proven?" Ethan straightened, meeting the Chancellor's gaze. "I've proven that humans can adapt, fight, and survive. But more importantly, I've shown that we can be allies, not enemies." Ythar's expression remained unchanged. "And why should we trust a species that has only just begun to reach the stars? What guarantees do we have that humans will not turn on us, as other races have in the past?" Ethan knew that this moment was critical. The fate of the peace talks, and possibly humanity's future, hinged on his words. He took a deep breath, his mind racing for the right response. "Because we've learned the cost of war," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "We don't want more enemies. We want peace, to grow together and learn from each other. But trust takes time. I understand that. But without it, what's the point of trying?" There was a long silence. Ythar studied Ethan for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You speak of trust, human, but you have not shown us all your cards. There are things we have yet to see, things that could change the outcome of this peace." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ythar's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I have heard rumors, stories of humans who are not just warriors, but manipulators, schemers who will do anything to get what they want. What is to stop you from using those tactics on us?" Ethan clenched his jaw, anger flaring inside him. "That's not who we are. Yes, humans have made mistakes. We've fought wars, betrayed trust, and made terrible choices, but we've learned from those mistakes. We want to build a better future." Ythar stared at him for a long time, the tension thick in the air. Finally, he spoke again. "We shall see, human. The decision is not mine alone, but the Council will consider your words carefully." Ethan nodded, though he could feel the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. The peace talks weren't over yet, and if he failed to win the Council's trust, everything he had fought for could be lost. As the Velexarin leaders turned and made their way toward the central building, Ethan exchanged a glance with Ayla. There was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now, too. "This isn't over, is it?" Ethan asked. Ayla shook her head. "No, not yet." And as the day drew to a close, Ethan realized that the true challenge was only beginning. He had proven his worth in battle. But now he had to prove that humanity was worthy of peace. The days that followed the High Council's arrival felt like an endless waiting game. Ethan Carter found himself pacing the halls of the Velexarin research facility, his thoughts spinning. The peace talks were scheduled to begin in 2 days, and while he had made progress with the Velexarin warriors, the true test lay with their leaders. The High Chancellor, Ythar, had been particularly difficult, his suspicion toward humanity unwavering. Ayla had remained by his side, offering support, but even she seemed tense. The long silence after the council's initial meeting hung heavily between them. "You're quiet today," Ethan observed as they sat in the garden once again, the distant hum of the facility echoing in the background. Ayla looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the alien sun. "I'm thinking of the decision ahead." Ethan nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The decision to trust humanity or to shut them out completely. He had made every attempt to show them that humans could be allies, not threats. But even after all he had done, even after everything he had endured, it still felt like the Velexaran were uncertain. "I've done everything I can to prove us," Ethan said, his voice rough with frustration. "I've fought in their arena. I've shared our history. I've even tried to show them what humanity is capable of. But nothing seems to be enough." Ayla placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is not about what you've done, Ethan. It is about what they believe you can do. It's not about the battles you fought, but the trust you've yet to build." Ethan met her gaze. "Trust takes time. Time we don't have." Ayla hesitated before speaking again, her voice quieter now. "I have seen your world, Ethan. I know the cost of war. The Velexaran have suffered for centuries, and we are wary of repeating those mistakes. But I believe in what you've shown me. I believe humanity can be a part of something better." Ethan was grateful for her words, but the doubt still lingered. His mission here wasn't just to fight, or to show strength. It was to secure peace, and that wasn't something that could be earned in a few tests or battles. "Do you think they'll choose peace?" Ethan asked. Ayla's expression grew serious. "I cannot say. But I do know this. The council is divided. Some are still skeptical, but others see what you bring to the table. The outcome is uncertain, but you've given us a chance." Ethan leaned back against the stone bench, running a hand through his hair. "A chance. That's all we've got, huh?" "A chance is all we ever need," Ayla said softly. The next 2 days passed in a blur of meetings, briefings, and discussions that led nowhere. The High Council remained divided, and Ethan felt the weight of the impending talks press down on him. He couldn't help but feel like he was running out of options. Then, the day arrived. Ethan stood at the front of a large chamber within the Velexaran Council Hall, flanked by Ayla and several other high-ranking Velexaran officials. The massive room was filled with tense silence as the leaders took their places. At the far end of the chamber, a raised platform stood, where the High Chancellor, Ythar, and the other council members sat. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Ethan had been briefed on what would happen next. He was to make a final appeal to the council, one last attempt to convince them that humanity was worth trusting. Ayla stood beside him, her presence comforting. But even she seemed apprehensive. The doors opened, and the Velexaran leaders filed into the room, their armored exoskeletons gleaming under the soft light. As Ythar entered last, the room fell silent. His sharp, onyx eyes flicked toward Ethan, studying him with a calculated gaze. "Human," Ythar began, his voice as cold as always. "You stand before us now, as you did in the arena, as you did in the research chambers. But this is not a test of your physical strength. This is a test of your species, your people. What will you offer us to prove that you are worthy of an alliance?" Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. The words he had rehearsed seemed to evaporate from his mind. What could he say to convince them? What did humanity have to offer that would outweigh their fear and doubt? Ethan cleared his throat, standing tall. He knew this was his moment, the moment that would either secure humanity's future or condemn it to the shadows of the galaxy. "We are not perfect," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've made mistakes. We've fought wars and caused suffering. But we've learned. We've grown, and we're trying to build something better. We don't have the answers to everything, but we have the will to try." He paused, looking around at the council members, meeting their eyes one by one. "You asked why you should trust us. The truth is, you don't have to. But you can. If you take a chance on us, On humanity. We'll stand by you. We'll work together, not as enemies, but as partners. We will fight alongside you, not because we need to, but because we want to." The room was silent. Ethan could feel the weight of their judgment bearing down on him, but he refused to look away. This was the only chance he had. Finally, Ether spoke, his voice thoughtful but unyielding. "Your words are strong, human, but words are not enough." Ethan's stomach sank. "Actions," Ether continued, "are what matter. If you can prove your species will stand by those words, if you can demonstrate your loyalty in ways that cannot be faked, then perhaps, just perhaps, we will consider the alliance." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you want us to do?" Ythar stood up, his eyes locking with Ethan's. "We have a threat at the edge of our territory, a hostile force that has been growing in power. If you wish to prove humanity's worth, help us destroy this threat. Only then will we see if your species is truly ready for an alliance." Ethan's mind raced. This was it, the moment where humanity's fate would be sealed. "I'll do it," Ethan said firmly, determination filling his voice. "We'll help you. We won't let you down." Ythar nodded slowly. "Very well, human. Your actions will speak louder than any words." As the council members filed out of the room, Ayla turned to Ethan, her expression a mix of relief and hope. "You've done it, Ethan. This is the chance we need." Ethan nodded, but the weight of what lay ahead settled heavily in his chest. They had earned a chance. Now it was time to prove they deserved it.